Well, that's a very, very interesting video about some of how you think and function and have acted over the years. And that explains a lot about why you're such a good guy. You're operating on some foundational, powerful principles of the gospel. And I think probably in summary, it's like, show up. The phrase you used was, just hanging on to the good gospel, and not getting derailed, even though there might be all sorts of things. And I've looked at as just showing up, which is the same thing as, it's just really the same principle. And if you just show up, even if you're having the troubles and the weaknesses and whatever, you'll be all right. And so that's neat. I mean, that's such an important and foundational principle. And frankly, the church lets you be about as sinful as you can be, as long as you show up and as long as you don't try and start bashing the church and getting a following. That's where people get wrapped around the axle. Generally, is they're bad-mouthing the church and they're gathering a following. They decide they want to have a sword fight with a brother, in which there's only one thing that happens when that happens. Even you're going back, I think probably the 1990s and the Constitutionalists. That was it was weird. There's some really prominent people who got excommunicated in the 90s, and there was, I think they even call them a certain six. I don't remember what label they put on them, but they just couldn't leave it alone, and that was the problem. It wasn't even what they believed. You can believe you pretty much can believe whatever you want, as long as you believe it and keep quiet about it, and it's within you and within your home. So anyway, but if you look at these, even contemporary people get excommunicated. They're gathering a following. Their stake leader, usually it's at a stake level, counsels them to tone it down, and you might have to turn off your podcast, quit doing your podcast, or quit doing your writing. And you might be some expert, some PhD, some professor somewhere, and they tell you just don't be writing on this stuff or taking church to task. And if you'll do that, hold on, listen to your priesthood leaders, you'll do fine. Anyway, I'm not quite sure what the announcement is that you keep referring to. I'm going to assume that it's the get vaccinated and wear masks. That's about the only thing I can think of that's kind of contemporary going on right now, which absolutely baffles me. I have never been any more baffled by why that's an issue with anybody. And let me tell you my experience with that, assuming that's it. And if it isn't, you'll know where I am on that issue. Back in the early part of the year, February, March, whenever it was, when they were talking about coming out with the vaccines and such, Jan and I decided, hey, what's the hurry? We basically live a sequestered lifestyle. I'm not sure about this vaccine. I don't really like the idea of being a guinea pig on it. And so let's wait. There's no rush. We're just fine with that. And if it wasn't 2 days later, the first presidency, President Nelson, comes out and basically says that we, as the first presidency and Quorum of the 12, we've been fasting and praying for a solution to this pandemic, and this vaccine is the answer. And basically, we're encouraging everybody to do it, but it's your choice. Find out for yourself, and have that as an escape hatch. Which I think there's probably some situations, individual situations, in consultation with people's doctors, that may not be a good idea. But as a general rule, basically they're saying go get your vaccine. Now there's a principle in the church: if the prophet is speaking as the prophet, it's considered the word of God. If the first presidency is speaking as the first presidency, they're not going to miss. And then if it's the first presidency, the prophet, the first presidency, and the Quorum of the 12, if they speak in a unified voice, you take that to the bank. Any of those three are infallible. With the prophet, it's hard to tell: is he talking as a prophet, or is it his opinion? And of course, that gives everybody a chance to say, well, it's just his opinion. President Nelson, if he'd been speaking, said, hey, I just think you ought to go get vaccines based on my medical experience, that frankly would have not been enough. But the prophet, the first presidency and the Quorum of the 12, unifiedly saying we've been fasting and praying, and this is the answer that we've gotten, and the Lord has provided this vaccine as the solution. We took that to the bank. Well, I was stunned. I've never in my life had a situation where my opinion and perspective was 180 degrees from the churches, and that was on this. We had decided we were going to wait 6 months before getting vaccinated. They came out with that, and it was like, I better I'll speak first person. I better reconsider this. Really seriously reconsider it, because I don't ever remember them coming out as a first presidency of Quorum of the 12 and saying something very specific to do like this. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll ponder this. Next morning, I woke up and was like, just do it. Go get your vaccine. And so I did. I signed up, went and got it. And that was really an interesting experience, because after I made the decision, it was like all that could come to my mind was the primary thing: follow the prophet. He knows the way. And then I had almost a giddy feeling inside, and that went on for 2 or 3 days. And I thought, even if I die, not necessarily the prophet's wrong, even if I die as a result of this, I'm going to be I'm prepared to meet my Maker and say, yeah, I died following the prophet, following the prophets. And if that was the result, I'm in. And so I figured no matter what, it didn't matter. I thought, I don't care if I get sick. I don't care if I die as a result of following the prophet. So anyway, then I don't know how many times over the next period of time, months, measured in months, came up all the time. And every time that whole issue came up, two things. One is I felt really, really good about the decision. Number two, there was no anxiety about making the decision. The decision had been made, die had been cast, and there I was. And so I wasted no energy, mentally, spiritually, physically, on a vaccination decision. And then I had a real eye-opening experience when I hurt my arm. I'm in number 10 pain agony. And first responders came, and it turned out the first responders was the volunteer people in Paradise. They got a volunteer EMT, I guess EMT, it's all volunteers. They got about 10 or 12 of them, part of the fire department that's all volunteer. They were the first ones there. And so then they come and do a bunch of vitals and different things. So by the time the ambulance get there, well, then they got a bunch of information they can give the paramedics and EMTs, so then they can really get to work quickly. And so anyway, so in that context, I'm sitting there hurting like crazy. And Jan's busy saying, it's okay, we've had our vaccine, we've had our shots. And I thought, that's the last thing I'm worried about, is the fact I've had my shots, I really hurt. And so she's busy trying to, in her typical way, do whatever. So anyway, so I'm thinking, that certainly isn't what I'd be telling them if it was me, because I hurt. And then a couple of them, she said several of them, I only heard one, said, thank you. We really, really appreciate that. And I overheard that, and I thought, wow, I'd never even thought about it from that perspective. And I thought, here we got, it's a Saturday morning, you got people that had plenty of things they were doing. They dropped whatever they were doing, and they hustled their selves up to help me. And I thought, my goodness, what a neat thing for those people to do. And I thought, the very least I can do is provide as safe an environment as possible for them to do their work. And it was just, I'd never even thought about the impact on anybody else as far as getting vaccinated. It was all me. And to hear them say thank you for doing that, for their safety, that was just, that could hit me in the head with a 2x4, and I wouldn't have been any more stunned. And I thought, yeah, this is a much bigger deal than just me. And so I thought I would have really been embarrassed if I hadn't gone in and been vaccinated and have a possibility of exposing those people to something when they're, up there on their own time, middle of a Saturday morning, when they were doing all sorts of other things they'd rather be doing up there tending to me. So anyway, that was like a triple reinforcement of getting the vaccination. If it's not for me, we'll make it for other people. And that was just a real intimate setting, but just in general, for other people, just in general. And so coming through this whole time, I have have not been able to figure out why anybody in the church has an issue with vaccination, because we had 15 prophets say we fasted and prayed and this was the answer. And so when I hear people that haven't had the vaccination and they're questioning and sometimes even rebelling, and then they claim to want to follow the prophet, it's like, well, it's really easy to follow the prophets on stuff you don't want to, a lot of the nebulous stuff like keep the commandments or whatever, that there's nothing really specific about it. Then as soon as there's something specific that they don't agree with, well, now they want to have a sword fight. And so I have absolutely no sympathy or real tolerance with that philosophy, which is unusual. Usually it's pretty much, well, whatever you want, well, it's okay with me. But I'm thinking, please, don't be telling me you want to follow the prophet if you don't take something as basic as this, where you got 15 prophets lining up saying, hey, here's the deal. So then when the second thing came out, I'm thinking, well, they shouldn't be really needing to be doing that, but I guess they have, and I really appreciate their courage, because I guess they've gotten a whole bunch of flack for the original thing, which just, I just don't get it. And so, anyway, so I'm thinking, well, okay. I guess they know they're going to get a bunch of flack, and they're willing to do it, and to trying to help the people. So, anyway, that's my experience, and that's my philosophy on that issue, which may or may not be the one you kept referring to. So, anyway, but, I think your insights are absolutely spot on, that you just serve the right master. Excuse me, sorry. Even if you're still struggling with the other one, because that's the answer. Is one of life's purposes, I think, is learning how to tap into the atonement for the stuff you can't do. Most of the stuff we just can't do, and acknowledge that, recognize it, and rather than giving up, work on having the Savior take the load. That footprints in the sand principle, and stop beating yourself up because you can't do it. Because of course you can't do it. It wasn't designed for you to do it. It was designed for you to learn how to turn it over to the Lord, which is not an easy thing from a lot of different directions, not the least of which is where do you draw the line on all I can do and relying upon Him. And so I find it very reassuring that I have never personally ever come even close to having these, what I guess they call faith crises now and then. And we certainly had our share I've had my share of opportunities for that stuff. But it's just never been there. I just don't even think in those terms. And we've had some pretty devastating things in the church, and out of the church has had some things that would be very easy to turn on, to turn away from the church. But it's not the church; it's the people in it. It's the people. It's the issue, not the church. Not, it always comes down. It's the bishop didn't say hello to me, so I'm going to leave the church. Something stupid like that. It always comes down to the people, and recognize it's for every and the realization that it's kind of hard to think about that maybe I've offended somebody that has either left or wanted to leave the church. Certainly not the intent, but having that be the result. And so I just have to cut each other a lot of slack and realize it's not the church, it's the Savior. And so in any case, that's kind of I see it. I have some pretty strong feelings that way, and it goes back. Part of it goes back, and I said this up at Bear Lake. My crossroads with deciding whether or not to live the gospel was taking on the Melchizedek priesthood, and that was probably a 3-month struggle, because it was like, as I read the oath and covenant of the priesthood, it was like, man, you take that on, screw up, you're in a lot of trouble. I thought, I don't know about that. I don't know if I can do that. That's kind of risky. I don't know if I want to do this or not. Read a few more verses, and it says, and if you don't take it, you're in just as much trouble. And I thought, well, that's a fine dilemma to be in. If you take it and screw up, you're in trouble. If you don't take it, you're in just as much trouble. And so I kind of wrestled with that and tried to figure if I could weasel out of that, and finally decided, no, I'm not going to weasel out. So it made only one course of action, has to take it and then do everything you can to honor it. And literally from that time forth, for the last 50 plus years, that's what I've done, is I've tried to honor that covenant on a proactive basis. And I think with that as an undergirding, a foundation, I really believe that making a proactive effort to honor that covenant has shielded me from reacting in ways that would create a faith crisis. And so I'm not a very good empathetic person on faith crises. I don't get it. I really don't. And so I'm probably not the one to come to for anybody that has a faith crisis, because they're not going to get a whole lot of sympathy from me. I don't think. Nobody really comes to me with those things. But in any case, it's like, I don't quite, I guess, and it's based on my experience, I just don't quite get some of it. So anyway, but I'm thinking, gosh, I'm really pleased you're still so young and really have some wonderfully grounded principles that you should be safe. And I know you are, because I've watched you interact with other people in situations that could certainly test and strain those kinds of principles, and you've always come through so well. So in any case, keep it up, and so we'll talk to you later.